Although I am generally someone who has traditionally gamed a lot, for a few different reasons, there are giant gaps in my personal gaming completion list. When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, and while I played some of the Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 games we owned, I missed a lot on those platforms. By the time I was a snot-nosed elementary kid, I had a PlayStation 2, but because of the lack of funds and the fact that I was obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dragon Ball Z, the only games I really were related to those two things. I rented games a lot, but I rarely finished them in the weekend, which was the only time I had to game, really. Heading into my middle school years, my father and I developed an obsession with EverQuest 2 that took up basically the entirety of my 5th to 8th grade years as a gamer. Moving into high school in the year 2010, I finally got my hands on a 360, and my love for gaming reignited. I caught the Call of Duty bug that so many people were obsessed with at that time. While I would take a break to play things that I really was enthralled by, Call of Duty was a big reason that even in the 360 era, I missed a lot of the major titles. If I've edited this intro properly, there should be some kind of video element to show some of the games I haven't played. I got an Xbox One for graduation, means a lot of the seminal PlayStation 4 titles that everyone is so impressed by, I missed completely. In high school, I had a job and I could afford games, but most of my gaming time was spent online with friends, so single player wasn't at the top of my priority list then. The point of this intro is to try to explain why this series exists. I want to play a lot of things I missed, and I'm a gamer in my late 20s now. I've got kids, I'm not interested in multiplayer gaming. I play games almost solely with stories and almost always to the credits. So, with this, I wanted to go back and I want to play things I missed, things that interest me and things I didn't know would interest me until I played them. I don't want to be biased, and if I try something and I'm not liking it, it's better to me than potentially missing something that I could love. I don't want this intro to take a really long time, and I know you hopefully saw based on the title that this was Dragon's Dogma, so there's a lot more I can say, like how I played the first two Yakuza games this past year, or how I went back to Persona, but instead of getting into all that, probably better if we just get into the first episode of Slaying the Backlog. So, before I actually played Dragon's Dogma, I thought it would be an interesting exercise to talk about what I think I know about the game. So this entire paragraph that I'm about to speak was written before I even started. Dragon's Dogma was released in 2012, which unfortunately for Dragon's Dogma means it was a year after Skyrim, which I was obsessed with, Dark Souls, which I was also obsessed with, and my personal favorite Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. This means that any time spent gaming, while my cousin was online, was spent in Modern Warfare 3. We had over 1,000 hours each in it. And when he wasn't on, I was either playing Dark Souls or Skyrim, more than likely. But here's what I think I know about Dragon's Dogma from having friends who played it or being a fan of gaming content for the last 10 years, just what I've heard in general. I believe it's a fantasy RPG with mechanics similar to Monster Hunter, or maybe like Shadow Colossus or something. I know a big part of the appeal is that you climb on your enemies, and that those enemies are large. Now, I admit I haven't really played Monster Hunter or Shadow of the Colossus, so even if there are similarities, those similarities for me will only be on a surface level. I assume there are stats and armor and companions, and open world and quests, and all the things you expect from an RPG, especially an RPG in 2012. To what extent any of those systems play a factor in the gameplay, or even honestly, if they exist at all. There's one other thing I know about Dragon's Dogma, and that it has a system called the Pawn system, and that people really like it. I don't know what it is, I don't know how the player interacts with it, I don't know if it has any lore implications to the world. I know it by name, and by name alone. So why Dragon's Dogma? Well, I enjoy RPGs in fantasy worlds, and I haven't played a game made by Capcom this year. And the main reason for Dragon's Dogma now is that Dragon's Dogma 2 comes out, as of this video being written, March 22nd, 2024. It makes this video, and all of my opinions, somewhat topical, which I can't expect for every video of this series, but I can hope that maybe that will mean someone watches this. For this video, for my playthrough, I'm playing the Dark Arisen version of the game that it released in like, whatever, 2017 or whatever for the Xbox One and the PS4. I never played the original, and I don't know what differences this game has from the original. Dark Arisen currently sits on a Metacritic user score of 8.0. This is a good sign and a great score, so I'm very excited to dig in. Now that I've got all the preliminary talking points out of the way, I've written all I care to before actually starting the game. Let's get into it. One last disclaimer before we do. I don't have a capture card, and I streamed all the footage from my Xbox to Twitch and then downloaded it from Twitch to my PC to edit the whole thing together. If the quality isn't that great, or if certain things need improved, I'm going to apologize now, and we're going to work on this series as we go. The beginning. The first hour and a half of Dragon's Dogma is wholly unremarkable. It's not an unusual position to be in. RPGs, in particular Japanese developed RPGs, typically take a while to get going. It wouldn't be worth mentioning that the game starts slow if it didn't feel completely counter to how everyone talked about the game and talks about what a hidden gem it was. The game starts without a character creator, without a class selection. The game starts with very little exposition. People keep calling you the Arisen, but what does that mean? You're just a guy in knight armor with a sword and shield. You run past a dragon, you kill some goblins or whatever, and then you fight a chimera. The chimera fight's cool. It's really just teaching you the mechanic. Not interesting. You never really feel like there's danger. For me, it's like I was wondering, where is this going? And when does this become the amazing game people say it is? Following that, we get our character creation. I made an older gentleman with a scar in his eye. There's an option to have your eye half closed so it fit well. I gave him slightly gray hair, and I figured I could roleplay my way as a guy who's seen the world some, been through some things, you know? Your village gets attacked by the dragon who dropped out of the sky portal. You picked up a sword, you try to fight, you get murdered, and he eats your heart or something, but you don't die. I'm going to move a little quicker so we can get to the part where the game gets interesting, where I feel like it becomes good. You awake, people call you the Arisen. You have the power to summon pawns, which are basically your party members in this game. You can create a main pawn, which seems to be someone you want to be with you permanently, who complements your playstyle. I created a female warrior. If I'm going to be the damage, then I need a tank, right? For the other pawn, I kept the rook I started with for now. He's a mage who can give me and my warrior pawn fire armor on our weapon, which in this area of the game seems to be everything 5 encounters weakness. Then the game annoys me for a little while longer, as there's a training quest I think is supposed to show you how to work with your pawns after we've already fought things on the way to the area. And then you take a little nap and a Hydra attacks the training area. The fight apparently ends when you cut off one of the head of the Hydra because it flees after that. I didn't know this though, so I spent a good amount of time trying to damage the heads equally, thinking I could critical hit one of them if I shot him in the face or something. And then the annoying part, you're let loose to do a few side quests, but your next main quest is to escort the Hydra heads to the capital Grand Sword. I attempted to do 2 separate side quests, and I got killed on each one, so I gave up. I did the escort mission like a good little Arisen. The first quest I tried to do had to do with investigating this well. I went down in the well, could barely hurt the things down there, and I died. The second quest I tried involved finding Quina. I hope I'm saying that right. The woman who helped us after we got our heart ripped out. Her dad comes to you concerned because the woods are dangerous, and she was alone. I tried. I got attacked by some bandits, and I died. So maybe there was a shop in the first village. There was, where I could have upgraded my gear or maybe bought new gear, or maybe I was intended to come back later. I personally chose to think it was the latter, and I took off towards the capital. This escort mission was annoying. You face wave after waves of enemies, mostly goblins and harpies. There's an area off the path with some bandits, but I simply wasn't strong enough to fight. The cart moves slow, the enemies keep coming, and the whole thing's a mixture of annoying and boring. There's a cool moment where I was picked up from a harpy, and I had to break out before I got so high that the fall would kill me, and that was cool. But generally, I didn't like it. That harpy moment was the moment where I started to see the vision, though. See, if large animals could be climbed on, then those large animals could also move on their own will and take you for a ride, then the emergent gameplay moments in this game have the potential to not only be insane, but also be amazing. At the end of the escort mission, for me at least, it was nighttime. I had to fight some zombies. This was cool and unexpected. It made the end of the quest at least feel interesting. Zombies were weak to fire like everything else, and we destroyed them. There was at least some variety in our gameplay finally. The point of the last few paragraphs is not to attack the game. As I said before, RPGs often move slow. The point I'm trying to make is that if the beginning isn't appealing, and if you didn't expect it to be slow, just buckle down and get through it. There's some special things to come, and I can see the unappealing start turning some players off. Oh, and for a bit of foreshadowing, help Kina if you can. Grand Soren is where the game opens up, and where for me personally, the game began to click. We get a shop where we can upgrade our character. We get a quest to go check out the Pawn Guild, which is a really cool quest. You go down into the city. There's enemies all the way down, and then at the bottom, there's some mystery, crazy tentacle creature, and you have to run all the way back up while trying not to die. I had a few of my pawns follow me, and I had to double back to grab them. And I lost track of where I was going a few times, which made the whole scenario feel like there was pressure. Of course, pawns are kind of disposable, and I didn't really have to pick them back up, but at this point in the game, it felt like the right thing to do. It was upon finishing this quest that I fell in love with Dragon's Dogma. Modern gaming feels less concerned with developer intent and more concerned with not wasting time and resources developing things that the majority of players won't get to find or get to see, or they can't access on their first playthrough. When I finished my time with the Pawn Guild, I got a notification. Remember the quest I mentioned where Kina from the first village was missing? I failed the quest. The woods are dangerous and she is alone. Her father told me that he was concerned that the woods are dangerous and she was alone. I didn't listen. I let modern gaming sensibilities tell me that because I hit a little roadblock early on, I could just come back later. I was wrong, and I paid for it, and that is something that made me love Dragon's Dogma. Gameplay and mechanics. The world of Dragon's Dogma is brutal. Although you get stronger as you upgrade your gear, your skills, your vocation, and your pawns, the world still feels like it's full of plenty of dangerous things, and you could die at any moment. In the early game, on the way to do a quest, I had to face a Cyclops, a Chimera, and then I had to run away from a dragon before I get to the keep that I was tasked with helping out at. I ran from the dragon because I tried to fight it the first time, and I was feeling confident coming off the Cyclops and Chimera victory. And I recently delved a little deeper in the pawn system and I had a full 4-man party. The dragon flew over, blew fire, and wiped the entire party. The vocation system acts like a job system in Final Fantasy or Bravely Default, or one of those games. Each vocation has levels that you increase, and then you use discipline points to purchase skills within those vocations. These points are also used to switch between vocations, meaning that you're not locked into any specific playstyle at any point in the game. Different vocations have different skills and different weapons and armor that they're able to utilize. I love this system. I wish there was more than 3 basic classes, 3 advanced versions of those classes, and 3 hybrid classes. I only want more because what we have is good. Also upgrade your main pawn in the same way. Inspect them out and change them and all of that. This was not a system I needed convinced on or sold on. As soon as I saw the system, I knew what it was and I knew I would love it. The pawn system is unique to Dragon's Dogma, and it ended up being one of the coolest things in the game. I can only imagine how cool it would have been if I was playing the game on release with everyone else. See, the way it works is you get one main pawn that you completely customize, as I mentioned before. The gear, location, everything. And then you can hire 2 additional pawns from inside the rift. This to me is basically like a Drivatar from Forza. It's a copy of someone else's main pawn. The reason I think this would be cool if I was playing with everyone else is you could have brought your friend's pawn with you. During your adventure, the pawns will give you tips on quests, clues on enemy weaknesses, and general little tidbits on the world lore. It's not a very deep system as far as the dialogue is involved, but it's a game from 2012, so I'll cut them some slack here. For what it is, I think the pawn system is cool, and probably innovative for the time, and I hope they get deeper with the second game coming. UI and inventory management in Dragon's Dogma leave some things to be desired. Opening the main menu and then pressing map every time I want to look at it, at where I'm going, is a mild annoyance. Quick access to your inventory by pressing the view or select button is a cool feature, but having to select items one at a time when I want to hand them off to my pawns is another mild annoyance. Being able to dump everything at the inn in Grand Soren is a good feature though, and virtually no limit to the amount of stuff I can store. Makes the whole thing feel a lot better. The best part of this is that when enhancing weapons and armor, you can do so with items from your storage. You don't have to dig through the storage to pull them out, and bring them to the shop, and then go put them back. You just get to use them. I would still say, aside from the slow start, the mild annoyances with menu interactions in this game is my least favorite part. Enhancing your gear is another really cool feature though. Every piece of gear you get in the game can be enhanced up to 3 times. These enhancements cost money, and generally some of the materials you've been gathering off of dead enemies or from plants and things in the world as you've adventured. Some of these weapons and armor gain bonus effects when you enhance them to the highest tier. This feels like a cool way to make any piece of gear at least worth checking out on some level. Even the rusty starting weapons gain a pretty cool effect if you max them out, where they can slow enemies to a crawl and strike. It seems as though killing a dragon also enhances your weapon to the highest tier. Or maybe there's a 4th tier. I didn't really understand this part. I only noticed it towards the end of my playthrough, when I actually started killing dragons. Enhancements also do a great job of making you feel strong. Remember that point I was mentioning earlier with the keep, where I had to fight the Cyclops and the Chimera? Both instances I saved before I started the fight, not knowing how strong me and my pawns would be compared to these things. And I crushed both ends. The Cyclops got stun locked by a pawn hitting it with lightning, and my damage output being much higher than before at this point meant the Chimera didn't stand much of a chance either. Then I ran into the dragon, and I was feeling pretty good, so I saved, and I just figured I'd try it. And that's when I got wiped. Dragon's Dogma is in a very unique position in terms of build variety, and as a result, combat. What I mean by this is you not only decide your character and how you want to build them up, but then you focus your whole team around that. In theory, if you wanted to be an unkillable tank, for example, you would build yourself up as a warrior, and then select pawns that primarily have healing abilities to keep you alive. You can go with a traditional RPG party route like I did, make yourself DPS or tank or mage, make one of your pawns the other, and then you also bring a healer along. Or you could run multiple tank characters. You could do a challenge run and do all mages. You could try making your character primarily a healer and see if you can finish the game without attacking anything. There's a uniquely high range of possibilities, and while I haven't looked up any ideas prior to writing the script, I am curious what other people may have come up with. You see, the pawn system, when you go in to purchase your 2 pawns, has a setting where you can see what skills and abilities they have. So if someone wanted to spend a good amount of time finding exactly the right pawn for their build, they could. One of the systems of the game that I didn't really interact with or have much interest in was the job board. Basically, you can get generic quests from boards throughout the game. These quests range from kill X number of such and such creature to escort so and so to such and such location. I hate escort missions, like with a fiery passion. I could probably do a whole video on my hatred of escort missions, but I despise them. But needless to say, in the job boards, I took every generic kill X number of whatever creature quest. I never touched any of the escort jobs. But I didn't seek out the job boards, and I didn't really make much of an effort to finish those jobs. I finished a handful of them, killing creatures once, just by killing creatures naturally as I quested through the world. I did none of the escort ones. I never tried, and I was never going to. Story and quest. The story of Dragon's Dogma, I would say, can be broken up into 2 sort of main plots that end up converging at the end. The motivation you are given at the beginning is that the dragon that attacks the village steals your heart. It's also hell-bent on destroying the world or something. You have that to worry about as well. But after killing the Hydra and being introduced to Grand Soren, you're given the opportunity to begin the 2 main plots I mentioned. One involves doing work for the Duke of Grand Soren, which is what would be considered the main plot. It starts by doing work to be able to do work for the Duke, but whatever. The secondary plot is investigating this cult that's in the area. The cult worships the dragon and the destruction that it's creating. And they're making skeletons or zombies. I don't remember which, but basically they're causing destruction also. That's what you find out when you start investigating. The main plot with the Duke covers doing jobs to get his favor, and then doing more jobs, until a ring is stolen by an evil sorcerer, and that's when the plot really picks up. Speaking of the Duke, I don't like the guy. I don't like his gesture. I don't like the people in his court. I don't like anything about it. The reveal at the end of the game, and which is technically a spoiler, but I'll cover shortly, is amazing. So you have this ring, stolen by an evil sorcerer who ends up wanting to also bring about the dragon, I believe, and the cult leader shows up too, and you face down the sorcerer. The dragon takes out the cult leader, and you have to face the dragon.
The long night is come! The dragon's reign at last begins! Merciful winged death! All-powerful and merciless Grigori! Behold, you unrepentant blasphemers! This is absolute truth! This is salvation!
In summary, Dragon's Dogma is one of the most interesting games I've ever played. The story is mundane for the majority of the game, but at the end it's about the fate of the world you're playing it. It feels almost like an MMO story, where you spend a lot of time helping out random people with pretty average things, and then suddenly you're facing down the greatest enemy the world has ever seen. I don't know exactly how I feel about it. I rolled credits 3 days prior to writing this, and I still don't know if I love the story being the way it is, or I mostly just liked it. The end of the game has you made a choice between giving up your loved one, which for me was the Duke's woman. I did a few quests with her, which actually got me thrown in jail. I was really over that lady, but I guess I missed the other romance options in the game. So that's where we were. This part felt weird to me because I wouldn't describe any of the romance I saw as actual romance, but whatever. So you choose to fight the dragon and regain your heart and save the world because that's the right thing to do, regardless of a love interest, which wasn't really needed to motivate me personally. Then you're treated to a run away from the dragon section, and then a run towards the dragon section, and a lot of not actually fighting the dragon. At one point, you're flying on its back. Honestly, the whole thing's unnecessary and fell flat for me. I would say a cutscene and then a fight would have been perfect. But then you actually get to fight the dragon. And I was using the rusted weapon, not knowing I couldn't explode the dragon, so my damage output was very low. But we got the job done. Then the reveal about the Duke having made a deal with the dragon and him being evil happens. And once you kill the dragon, the spell or whatever wears off, and the Duke ages, finally, after a really long time. Once you go to see the Duke, he blames you, saying that you made a deal with the dragon, even though you killed it. Oh, and also, there's a giant hole in Grand Soren now. You get to live with your loved one, so I guess that's something, right? The post-game, I did not engage in basically at all. I felt I was done, and diving into a hole a bunch of times, or exploring the world to get 30 of this rare item, to see out the quest, just didn't feel worth it to me. To wrap this whole thing up, and to put an end to the video, I want to say I enjoyed Dragon's Dogma. Dragon's Dogma fails to live up to its potential, probably because of hardware limitation. But I'd rate my Dragon's Dogma experience at a 7, maybe 7.5. I'm happy I played it. I enjoyed the time I spent with it, and at the end I'm ready to move on. I saw potential in the ability to climb on enemies, but that potential never really came to fruition in my time with Dragon's Dogma. I think the combat is fun. I think the build variety is cool. And I believe if you played at the same time as other people, the pawn system would have been even cooler than it already was. What playing Dragon's Dogma did for me personally is made Dragon's Dogma 2 move up from a game I thought I might check out to a game I know I need to play. If they can utilize newer technology, then capitalize on some of the things I know they had to have intended to do, then I know Dragon's Dogma 2 will be a truly special game. I'm not a completionist. This game doesn't grab me 120%. I'm not going to try and do everything. Dragon's Dogma didn't do that. I don't really feel like I needed the post game. I don't feel like I need to launch into a New Game Plus. I enjoyed what I played, but I'm not a diehard Dragon Dogma guy either. I know there are people who watch this and want to comment, hey, you missed this or you missed that, and that's fine. I'll leave you with this. If you haven't played Dragon's Dogma, I recommend it if you can fit it in. But if you can't, Dragon's Dogma 2 should absolutely be towards the top of the most anticipated games for next year. Don't skip it. After playing the first one, I now know the potential of the sequel is high, and I know why people are so excited. And if you could do me a favor, like and subscribe, as it would help a lot. I'm going to try to keep up on this series, and hopefully I can improve on the format and recording. And I know there's going to be things that aren't great in the first video, but I'm going to work on it. I'm open to suggestions. I'm happy to try and learn from criticisms as long as they are constructive. You can chat with me in the comment section, and as long as you're not hateful, I'm happy to talk about whatever. I'm even happy to take suggestions on what another game I should check out. As always, be excellent to each other.